Today we're going to make a symmetrical design on this sheet of 8.5 by 11 printer paper. I have a piece of vellum, which is like tracing paper. You can see through it. It's going to help me make my design perfectly symmetrical. And I have my regular Ticonderoga school pencil, which I love. The first thing we're going to need to do is divide this into quadrants so that I can get my motif in the upper left corner here. To divide the piece of paper into quadrants, I need to fold it in half once. And then I'm going to fold it in half again. When I open it up, that paper is now divided into 4 different sections. And I'm going to use my highlighter to show you that this area right here is indeed called our motif. The motif is the base unit of repetition in any design. What we want to do now is just start with a simple line. I like to start from the bottom left corner and I like to come up to the upper right corner. You can start your design however you want. You can make a curved line, you can make a straight line, you can use your ruler, it does not matter. But I am just going to make as straight of a line as possible from my lower left corner to my upper right corner on my motif. Once I have that diagonal line there, I put my vellum over it, line it up with the edge of the page, and then try my best to trace exactly over this line. In order to get this to be symmetrical, I know that I don't rotate this page, but I need to flip it like I'm flipping the page of a book. I line it up with my upper right quadrant, and I trace exactly over that line. Tracing exactly over that line is going to leave me a very light line underneath it, and then I can pull down. It's easier to actually come this way for me. There we go. And trace it again. To get down to this lower right quadrant, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sheet of paper and I'm going to flip it, again lining it up with the bottom and the side of the page, and trace that line. Which leaves the lighter line, and then go ahead and trace over that. And of course, in order to get over here in my lower left, I can start in the lower right and just flip it, or I can start where I started before in the upper left motif in this quadrant here and flip it down. I line it up with my edges of my page, trace over it, exactly over it, and that leaves me a light line, and I'm going to trace over that line. Now I have the beginning of a symmetrical design. The next line or shape that I'm going to add is up to me. All I know is that I need to fill in these areas that are going to be in the frame. So, being creative, I'm going to actually draw another line from the halfway point here to the halfway point here, and it's going to be parallel. So I draw a parallel line there. And as we all know, once we add something to the motif, we want to trace it, flip it, and keep adding it to each other quadrant. So now I trace it here. That'll leave me the kind of lightness to be able to trace later. Flip it again, trace, flip it this again, and trace over that. Now I can go back and just make sure these lines are nice and dark. You want your lines to go off the edge of the page, and at one point we also want the lines to connect. Now on my computer screen, I'm looking at some different decorative tiles, and I'm using that as inspiration of what kind of line that I want to make next. I think if I look at this one over here, I'm going to add a curved line right here. So I'm going to take this. I call it like a half leaf shape. And again, to make it perfectly symmetrical, I'm going to want to trace this. Flip it and keep tracing. So this is really all there is to making a perfectly symmetrical design, is to start in the motif, add a line, make sure it connects to either the edge of the page or to another line. We don't want to leave anything in no man's land that's not connected. Now I can trace this. This will come through here. Trace this. And there we have it. I look for the empty spaces and I think to myself, how can I fill this in? What other shape, what other kind of line do I want to use? I want to keep shapes large and simple, and what I don't want to do is add a shape like this into no man's land. I call this no man's land because this shape is not connected to anything. It's not connected to the edge of the page. It is not connected to another line. If I do indeed want to make a diamond, maybe I'm actually going to bring a line down. I'm going to find the middle of this line right here. Maybe not so much the middle. Let's start from this corner and come down halfway. And now I'm going to add more than one line at a time. I'm going to add that one. I'm going to bring a curved line down, and I'm going to bring it back up. So now I've added 3 lines at a time. I think anything more than 3 gets to be a bit difficult to keep track of what you have and what you haven't added. So I'm going to trace over these and flip it and add those 3 lines. To each other quadrant. Bring it down here into the lower by flipping. Take this, flip it over, line it up, trace. Lovely. This corner looks a little plain to me. So if I just try to think about what type of shape I want to put in here, maybe I want to echo this, or maybe I want to just bring another, I think that's what I want to do. I want to bring another half leaf shape over here, another half leaf curve right here, and then I'm going to bring a full leaf shape over to there. I think that's a pretty corner. So I've added something to my motif, which means I'm going to trace it so that I can trace it, flip it, and trace it in all my other quadrants. Oops, I missed that line completely. Let's go right, it's not easy. There we go. I I flipped it upside down. I'm going to trace over those lines again. And this is like one of those videos where it should become fast forward. Now I think, from my decorative tiles page that I'm looking at, I think I want to add a little loop-de-loo in here. So if I take, now I'm going to, instead of a line, I'm just going to add a shape, and it's going to be a loop-de-loo that comes here, and another loop-de-loo that comes there. And I think I want this to touch the edge, or at least come off of the edge, so I think I'm going to bring it up to a point like this. Bring this off here and bring this up to the edge that way. Bring this off to the edge and bring this off to the edge there. And have that, there we go. Trace that. If you don't like something you made, a line or a shape, just feel free to go ahead and erase it. My pencil is getting a smidge dull. So I want to flip this, take a second to sharpen. Trace exactly over the line again. Now I know that this is eventually going to be a 2-inch frame, So I really want to focus on the border, which means if this was going to be the top border, this space is empty. So now I'm going to focus on some more shapes and lines in this area right here. So maybe I'll come and do a teardrop again. And I know that if I came halfway here already, knowing that this is going to be symmetrical, when I flip this, it's going to look like that on the other side, so I just didn't even need to trace that. I am going to come around and do a semicircle, which means if I start here and come up here, I know this is going to flip over to the other side. Eventually, when you're doing symmetry, you may or may not even need the tracing paper. And that's going to start filling in this area here. I flip this upside down. I can't see it. I can't see that because it's not traced. So we need to trace this side. Now when I come back down here, there it is. Flip it over again, and this should complete this part of the pattern. Come back up to the motif, and I'm going to notice that it's still a little empty in here, but it's definitely empty in here. So I'm going to use this same shape and echo it over here so everything goes together. And actually, I may just come around here and then come around again. Flip it. Trace it. So to create a symmetrical pattern, all we need to do is keep adding lines or shapes that connect either in the middle, at an edge, on these lines of the quadrant, or off the page. And then you can sometimes get a little creative with your lines as you get more comfortable. And let's bring in a little S curve here. Which means this could technically come up on a curve over here. We're going to flip it. Bring the S curve over. Bring this line down. Here's my S curve. bring this down again here, come up and over, curve this down. And last but not least, I can flip it over to the left side. Connect there, this comes out of here. So this should come here. This should come up to here. Then later in your design is when you can start adding some simple shapes to fill it in. As long as they're connected to something else. Let's just fill this one in. Which means we can put one over here. It's connected. This one's here, this one's gonna come over here. And I may as well use my tracing paper vellum for correct placement. And then I still have to do this little doodad over here, here, and here. What you want to do, the great thing about this is now that you have a lot of the edges done, when you cut from the inside, and this is just a practice frame, so when we cut from the folded edges, you'll see why we focus most of our energy on the edges, and this is why. So that we can get this beautiful, decorative, symmetrical frame that we're going to later shade in with our ebony pencils and blending stumps.